Hello, students, families, and educators. Welcome. College Success Programs and Career Transition Services have partnered to present to you today College Success for Students with Disabilities. My name is Dr. Lynette Henry, and we are excited to have you here today with us.
Hello, my name is Karen Huffman, and I'm very excited to present this information to you today.
Hello, my name is Maggie Contreras, and thank you all so much for being here with us today. We hope you find this information useful.
Hello, I'm Sarah Blake from Career and Transition Services, and I'm also thrilled to be here today. Thank you.
As we get ready for our presentation, you can email us at csp@fcps.edu or scan the QR code on the screen to receive a copy of this presentation, and we will put this back up at the end. All right, so today we're going to share with you ways to help families get their children prepared for college, what processes and resources you would need to help your child transition from high school to college. Make sure that students know their rights and responsibilities to help them to be successful in college, how to access accommodations and support in college, and self-advocacy. We hope you recognize that differences are strengths, not deficits. So let's begin. The messages that we hear many times from our family, from educators, teachers, counselors can impact our decisions to go to college. So let's ask the team, what messages did you hear about your ability and your potential to go to college? Sarah?
Well, I was always encouraged to attend college. My dad was a first-generation college student, and my mother actually didn't go to college, but I grew up in a very college positive environment, and we would visit college campuses, we would attend sporting events, and college was always the expectation for me and my siblings.
Thank you for sharing, Karen. So many times hearing not only about the expectation for you to go to college, but even doing a college visit was really helpful for you as a first generation student going to college. Thank you. Anyone else?
Sure. So I come from a family where my parents do have college degrees, but my grandparents, they did not have college degrees. They were immigrants, and they came to this country without that degree. But I think for me, college was not something that was talked a lot about in my immediate family, but where I went to high school and the support that I had from my teachers and staff at the school, there were very high expectations, and college was the expectation. So that's what got me so interested in applying to college and the whole college process.
Thank you for sharing. And we hear that too many times. Sometimes we will have many immigrant students come here, and families may even have had an education in another country, and it can be very different here. So I'm glad to hear that even you had educators that really help you in directing the way as we want to do today for our students. Thank you. Sarah, what about you?
Well, when I was growing up, I had 4 older brothers, and my brother closest to me was brilliant, and he skipped a couple grades in elementary school, and he finished his college degree, his bachelor's and his master's in engineering in less than 4 years. So when I was in school, and if a teacher ever connected that I was Paul's sister, they would always kind of cock their head and say, really? So I never really felt smart enough to think about college seriously. And while my dad went to an Ivy League school and my mom went to a small college close by, I was exposed to college, and most of the conversations at the dinner table around college were addressed towards my brothers, and they were the ones that were enrolled in the ACT prep programs. And while I was taken on college tours with my parents and family, those tours were really arranged for my brothers. And if college came up as a conversation for me, my family would say, oh, Sarah's going to go to college to find a husband. She's going to get that MRS degree. And so I never really thought college was going to take me places until I was actually there and experiencing it.
So not always having, even although you had around you where others had gone to college, your siblings, not always having those positive messages and people championing you to go to college. And I'm thankful that you did go to college and you had those opportunities. And those messages are so important. We really want to be champions for students in helping them to go to college. Thank you all for sharing. I also was first generation and an immigrant student, and I always knew that college was the only option for me, and it helped that those messages I was getting were positive towards going to college as well. So thank you all. All right, well, we talked about sharing what you need to do to be college and career ready. And so as I share this information, I'm not going to read everything on the slides because you will have access to this presentation, but I want you to think about what can you do starting at the elementary level. So I'm going to share this at elementary, middle, and high school level. And so one of the things you really want to think about at the elementary level is identifying your child's learning styles. And this is really important because it will help you in supporting your child in learning. And this is important in preparing them in order to be able to have those good study skills, test taking skills. I remember my daughter in school, she's an auditory learner, and oftentimes when she was learning, she would be playing, fidgeting with something in her hand, and the teacher would always take it away. And so being able to have conversations with the teachers to help them to see it wasn't impacting her outcome. She was still being successful. The reason she was fidgeting with that in her hand was in order for her to be able to concentrate and listen, because she was auditory, where my son was more tactile and needed to write or manipulate items to learn. So it's important to understand those things. Having a mentor or tutor, if your kids are struggling in school, struggling builds capacity, making sure that they have those additional supports in their lives to help them connect to school and also to improve on the academics. And begin to collect the different things that students are doing. So if they're getting awards or really great work samples, make sure you're beginning to develop a portfolio of those things to help them to begin to kind of think about how they will build their resume over time. And then it's important for students at elementary level to also, take them on a trip to the museum, take them to visit colleges. It's not the time they're going to be asking all the questions, but you're exposing them, competitions, plays, just exposing them to experiences which is going to impact their interest. And career interest at this time is really important in students beginning to think about what they'll want to do when they get older. And then as they go on to middle school at this time, now you're beginning to also consider looking at their strengths. We talk about interests. We also want to look at their strengths as well. And it's important to talk about students' strengths. Sometimes we think those differences are, we see them as a disability rather than seeing them as strengths, that we're not all the same, but those differences can be strengths. And how can we encourage students to take the courses that they should be taking in order to be able to meet the goals that they have after high school? So some of the things that you want to be thinking about at this stage, is, do your student want to take Algebra 1 in 8th grade? Algebra 1 in 8th grade is a gateway to college. And so plan ahead and think about the colleges that you want your child to go to. Do they need a higher level math? Because if so, then that is something that you want to consider. Taking them on college visits. Again, continuing the college visits, maybe job shadowing, maybe going to work with you, or going to work with a friend, getting to see what different careers are like, and help them to continue to begin to explore opportunities for different colleges and different programs. They might have an experience where they were able to shadow someone who was an accountant. And so you might want to begin to show them universities where, accounting is something that they can take on. And then financial literacy is important, and that should actually start at elementary level. You want to begin to look at scholarships, grants, competitions, essays. All of those kinds of things can help prepare them. You want to think about saving plans. So those things you want to begin thinking in elementary and continue on into middle and then also into high. So for high, you have begun to look at interests. You've begun to look at exploring colleges and majors. And so as you continue to take your courses, meet with your school counselor. And of course, you're doing this at every level, but meet with your school counselor and have conversations about the courses that you need. You want to make sure you're planning well to make sure that you're taking the courses you need so that you can gain entrance into the college. So begin to look at colleges, career industry certifications, the things that you need to know in order to be able to enter for those post-secondary opportunities. Begin to talk about GPA. How is students performing? You want to make sure that you're looking at the transcript of your child and see what courses they're taking, how they're performing, help them to understand GPA and what that means for their college and career opportunities. Continuing with mentoring and tutoring is important. Making sure that students continue to have leadership opportunities, clubs, get involved in clubs, get on teams that you're interested in, continue the college visits. And this is a big stage because now you're getting ready to apply to college. And so we'll talk a little bit more later about college applications, recommendation letters, times that you're going to be taking out the standardized tests as you get ready for college, and continuing to explore, looking at college and career fairs, internships, those kinds of things as you continue on. Another thing that you want to begin to think about is, as your child enters elementary school, you should be thinking about the goals for your child after they leave high school. Now, of course, may change over the years, but we kind of call this backward planning, thinking about the end and going back to the beginning in terms of what do they need, what courses do they need, what kind of diploma, what type of diploma do you want your child to graduate with, so that you can plan ahead your courses for each year. So make sure that you're meeting with your counselor early at each level and have those conversations so you can plan your courses. For the applied diploma, and you're going to see more of these, we are putting links in here so that you can access this information to get more details. But for the applied diploma, this is only available to students with an IEP. And then the difference between the standard diploma and the advanced diploma, the standard diploma requires 22 credits, while an advanced diploma requires 26 credits. So it's recommended that you research colleges and universities to determine what type of diploma will be required for those that you're interested in and plan ahead. Very important is making sure that you get to know these people at your school. So I talked to you about seeing the school counselor, but there's some other people that are also important for you to get to know at your school. And most of these ones you're going to see now at the high school level. So at the high school level, you'll have your ETRs, or your employment transition representative. You'll have the college and career specialist. You're going to have the transcript and records assistant. That's where you're going to get your transcript to send off to colleges. And of course, you have your school counselor at every level. And you're going to continue to meet adults in your school that can support you in this process. So make sure you're reaching out and connecting to trusted adults.
So how can you actually support a college-going culture? Well, it starts with cultivating an environment that encourages lifelong learning. We're lucky that we have two incredible colleges in our backyard. Both George Mason University and Northern Virginia Community College host a variety of community events that are open to the public. I've included the direct links to their community events pages on this slide. Taking your children to such events is an excellent way to expose them to a college campus without having to rely on a formal tour, which are often limited to high school juniors and seniors, especially during these COVID times. Speaking of tours, the pandemic has resulted in most colleges and universities investing in a professional virtual tour. They can be found on the school's individual websites, or you can check out the link I provided, UVisit, which is a one-stop shop for many college and university virtual tours. There are other seemingly small things you can do to support a college-going culture. Take family trips to museums. The Smithsonian has wonderful family programs that are offered in both English and Spanish that are often free of charge. Encourage rigorous classes, encourage your child's talents, and attend one of the many FCPS college prep events that are held throughout the school year. And finally, check out both college success programs and career and transition services. The direct links are on the slide. We are here to help you make higher education the expectation rather than the exception. Okay, so here are a few resources for students with disabilities that you can check out if you're not already familiar with them. Think College features 312 colleges and universities that offer post-secondary education programs for students with an intellectual disability. The Campus Disability Resource Database has a ton of information about all things disability and college. And I've also provided a link for the Virginia Special Education Transition College Planning Resource page. It is a list compiled by the Virginia Department of Education, so be sure to check those out. Okay, so what is the best school for your student? So how do you determine what is the best school for your student? Well, the first thing to remember is that college is a match to be made and not a prize to be won. It's important to keep in mind that what is best for the student who sits next to your child in math class may not be what is best for your child. I've linked to a fantastic resource guide that is actually meant for high school educators, but is 100% worth checking out for your family. This guide is from the US Department of Education, and it outlines what you need to know about the transition of students with disabilities to post-secondary education. One of the biggest things you can do for your child is to give them the time and space to reflect on what they want their post-secondary journey to look like. What are their academic interests and career goals? Skilled workers are in incredibly high demand. A trade school may be the best fit for your student, and many trade schools are partnering with employers to strengthen the school-to-job pipeline. And when looking at college, keep in mind that not all colleges are created equal. There's actually a phrase that's often repeated among the college admissions crowd. The hardest part of Harvard is getting in. A school that may not be as prestigious as, let's say, Princeton, can still provide an excellent education. And honestly, some people believe that colleges that don't require professors to commit to heavy research results in more engaging instruction because the professors can focus their time and energy on actually teaching the material rather than worrying about meeting publication deadlines. And also keep in mind how far away school is. Some students thrive in a smaller academic environment. And think about your distance from home. Just because an in-state school is in Virginia doesn't mean that it's actually close. For example, Emory and Henry is an in-state Virginia school. It's 5 hours away from FCPS. Meanwhile, University of Maryland is less than an hour away. And also think about career opportunities. Not all schools are created equal when it comes to majors. And finally, you need to think about tuition and financial aid, because it isn't a dream school if you can't afford it. Speaking of paying for college, I'm not going to go into much detail because FCPS and our partner, College Access Fairfax, host a variety of presentations throughout the school year about how to pay for college. Please attend one or all of these events. But as you can see, I've provided some links that highlight some great resources to jumpstart your search in figuring out how to pay for college. When it comes to scholarships, there are two extremely important things to keep in mind. Never, ever, ever pay to apply for a scholarship or pay to search for a scholarship. If a scholarship opportunity is legit, you will not have to pay for it. Additionally, there are tons of free scholarship search engines available. Please do not pay for one. And second, never, ever, ever stop searching. Scholarships pop up all the time. Search when your kids are in elementary school, middle school, high school, and then have them continue searching once they get to college. There is so much money out there to have your college paid for. You just need to know where to look. And it's not limited to just college. There are plenty of scholarships available for trade schools as well.
So now that you've chosen which colleges you're interested in, and you've already begun to look at your finances and planning for that, the next step would be college applications. And those are going to take place, many of them in your senior year, but I'll also share one that will take place in 9th grade. So many types of applications colleges use, and some will accept more than one. So find out which your college use, go make sure that you're looking at the college admissions website. Some colleges have the school online application, and this is not shared with any other colleges. So it's just the application for that specific college. Then we have the common application, and that is where you can use one application that is accepted by many schools. Now for the common application, even although you're using one application to apply to many schools, you would be required to pay an application fee for each of those schools that you're applying, unless you have a fee waiver. And then you would need to see your college and career specialist to find out more about that. Then we have the Common Black College application, and this is where you can apply to 61 historically Black colleges and universities, and that has a one-time $120 application fee. or you have the Coalition for College Application. Now, this one application is accepted by many schools, but instead of paying for each university, it only has one-time fee of $75 for application to colleges. And that may change over the years, but at this time it's $75. And with this application, this is the one that you can start as early as 9th grade to get a head start. So this is the only one you can start ahead of time. The others you start as soon as you go into your senior year. So to find out which application your college accepts, go to the admission section of the college website. Deadlines. Deadlines are very important because you want to make sure that when you have completed your college application, that you're following the steps that they've given you. So for example, you have to look at deadlines. When are the applications due? You have to pay attention to the transcript request, making sure that you're submitting it so that it meets the deadline for the application. You have to look at SAT and ACT registration deadlines. And also you want to look at the test dates as well. Scholarship deadlines. You also want to make sure your FAFSA, you apply for your FAFSA usually around October, or, in October, it usually opens of your senior year, but you want to make sure that you're keeping track of these deadlines. So, you can use whatever time management system you use, whether it be your calendar, notes on your phone, an Excel sheet, but please pay attention and adhere to deadlines. It's very important. When students are applying, many times they will see early decision, they will see early action, and it can become very confusing. So I want to make sure that you understand when you're applying to colleges what the differences are. So for early decision, this is the only time you would use it if you truly have that one top school. So suppose George Mason University is the only school I really want to go to, then that might be a good reason for me to use early decision. When you use early decision, you cannot apply to any other colleges using early decision. So if I was going to apply to George Mason, I couldn't use early decision at University of Virginia or University of Maryland. The deadline for most applications is usually around October, November, and usually you're going to get your decision by December, January. Now, if a college offers you admission for early decision, you've got to withdraw any other applications you have up there and make your enrollment deposit immediately. This is a binding decision. So once you have been accepted, you have to commit to that university. And I would advise before you do that, please make sure you use a net price calculator, which you can find online to make sure the college is affordable for your family. Then we have early action. Now, early action is not binding. So you can apply to multiple schools under this plan. This is where you're going to get your answers still early if you've gotten into that university. So again, deadline to apply is usually around November, December, but you'll have a decision, usually December, January. And then admitted students usually have around beginning of May to decide which college they want to enroll. Some colleges may offer both of these options and some may not. So talk to your counselor to get more information. Now, for students, if you're deciding to go early action or early decision, it's important for you to know that your senior grades the college will not likely see any of your senior grades when they make this decision. So if you had a bumpy junior year, then talk to your school counselor or college and career specialist about the best time to apply. Because you have other options such as regular decision. And that deadline is usually January, February, and colleges usually make that decision in late March and early April. And then some colleges have rolling decision and they have longer admission windows to apply and the decisions just come out as they may. Another thing that some colleges are going to require is a recommendation letter. Now, all colleges do not require recommendations, so please make sure you read the instructions carefully when applying. Sometimes they require a specific number of recommendations. They may say 2 recommendations, but 3 great people. Only send the number that they require. Do not send any more because think about the volume of applications colleges are receiving. Also, they may want those 2 recommendations from specific sources, such as a teacher or counselor. So you wouldn't want to ask, a friend to complete a recommendation when they're asking a teacher or counselor for that recommendation. Just remember, only submit what they require. And recommendations letters are confidential, so they're not shared with the student or the parent. So when it's time for you to apply and you need to have a recommendation letter, we have put a link in here for a senior questionnaire, which you could fill out, and you can even do that with your parents. And then you want to make sure that you are turning this in to your counselor or the person who's doing the recommendation. And the reason is if they have more information about you, they're able to write a more thorough and thoughtful letter to the college and university that is requesting that. Another thing we talked about in applying for college is taking your standardized test. And so we've put some links in here for the SAT test, ACT test. You know, I recommend in your, well, let me go back a little bit. Many schools, you will start taking the PSAT, which I don't have on here, but this is through SAT as well. You will take the PSAT in your 10th grade year, and then you will take the PSAT again in your 11th grade year, and you can take the SAT or ACT starting in your 11th grade year. And so when you do those, you might want to see which one you score on better. They're kind of different tests, but colleges accept them the same. Colleges, since we've had the pandemic, have changed to what are called test optional. And so you can look and see which colleges are test optional or test blind. And I want you to make sure that you know the difference. So for test optional, if you submit your scores, then colleges are going to consider the scores you submit. And if you don't submit any scores, they're not going to take that as something against you. Test blind means that no matter what, if you submit scores, the school will not consider those scores. It's called test blind. So test blind means the schools will not consider your test scores for admission decisions, even if you submit them.
Thank you, Dr. Henry and Ms. Huffman, for providing all of that value information around college planning. We're going to shift gears a little bit and speak about the accommodations process in college. And we want to start by providing you with an idea of the differences between high school and college. And we're going to go into more detail in the next couple of slides. So in high school, we really focus on the individualized education program, the IEP, and having students in that least restrictive environment. Students with disabilities are protected under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA for short. And it's really about making sure students are successful. Now in college, when we're talking about serving students with disabilities, it's about providing equal opportunity to fully participate. So making sure that students have everything they need to be at the same level as students without disabilities. So it's about providing access.
Wait, Ms. C, doesn't the student's IEP go to college with them?
That is a great question, Ms. Blake. And so you are correct. The IEP does not follow a student to college. There are no IEPs or case managers in college. So accommodations could look very different and some could be very similar. So we'll get a little bit more into what those could look like. Thank you for asking that question. Okay, so going over the laws in a little more detail. In higher education, students with disabilities are protected under the Americans with Disabilities Act and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, which are civil rights laws. Again, designed to promote access and prohibit discrimination. And the language of the laws are just written here for you.
So now let's look at these two graphics. I'm going to address the high school experience, and Ms. Contreras is going to talk about the college university experience. In high school, students with disabilities are supported by school staff and the IDEA legislation. When a student is enrolled in high school, parents can play a vital role in supporting their student. Parents have easy access to grades and report cards. And once a student has an IEP, the parent and the case manager can facilitate the student's education process. School staff ensure that the student receives accommodations that were identified in the IEP, and all teachers are made aware of the student's identified disability. In high school, assignments are generally assigned on a regular basis and are due the next class. And the student has a consistent daily schedule with which they're accustomed to. When a student is in high school, they are considered a child, which allows parents to actively advocate for them and speak with other members of the IEP team without the student's permission. Finally, teachers reach out to parents to share updates, student success, and our struggles and concerns.
And in college, a student has to self-disclose. So they have to seek out the accessibilities office and say, hey, I want to connect with you. What do I do? So it's really the student's responsibility to seek out that support. Professors cannot tell a student, hey, you have to do this. Parents cannot tell a student, hey, you have to do this. It is highly recommended, though colleges can't require it, that the student self-disclose to that accessibilities office. So students facilitate accommodations. So once the student decides to register with that accessibilities office, the process is very student-driven. And we're going to talk about that process in a few minutes here, but grades go to students. Students are responsible for managing and reviewing their grades. Parents do not usually get a copy of the students' grades. They are 100% going to the students. Parents can talk to their students about what's going on and have that conversation, but it's really up to the student what they choose to disclose. Students and professors have contact with each other. And sometimes parents might try to reach out to faculty members, and most likely faculty does not respond to the parent. They will only respond to the student. So that's one of the largest differences that families encounter. Students are considered an adult, and parents can provide support. Another point we make when we say that parents can support, parents can help when they go to orientation, when they're looking at schools. It can be helpful for parents to say, hey, these are the resources. Maybe help your child find what resources are available at each university or college, especially if you're doing college tours or anything along those lines. That will be really helpful for them. Weekly schedule and syllabus. So syllabi have all of the due dates, majority, I would say, have all the due dates for the students. So when the students have that first day of class, the professor provides a packet, usually anywhere from 3 to 10 pages of, this is what we're going to go over this semester. And those usually include the dates of when things that are due. So it's really up to the student to monitor their time and have those time management skills to know when to work on specific assignments. Some professors are really great at providing updates and reminders of when things are due, and others just say, it was all in the syllabus, it's expected to be done. So it's really important, I would say, at this time to start practicing on those time management skills if you haven't already.
Prior to actually enrolling in college, we recommend that students reach out to the Accessibility and Accommodations office at each college that they're interested in. And by the way, it may not be called Accessibility and Accommodations office. It may be called Disability Support Services or Student Services office. To identify the office, look for words like accessibility, disability, equity, or accommodations. Every college that receives federal funds must provide equal access to students with disabilities, and they must provide reasonable accommodations. Your student can pick up the phone now and start asking some of these questions on the slide. That experience on the phone might even help your child decide if the college is a good fit. And when you and your student are on a college tour, your student can stop by the accessibility office and ask these questions. Encourage them to speak with a staff member and ask, what services do you provide? How do you have any specialized programs? And what documentation is required in order to be eligible for accommodations? How will faculty members know if I have a disability? Does your office allow walk-ins, or do you have an appointment? And finally, what is the process for receiving accommodations for things outside of class, like housing and meal plans? Now, once your child is enrolled in college and determined that they want to disclose their disability and register with the accessibility office, here are the basic steps required to register for accommodations. And by the way, all of these steps involve self-advocacy. And self-advocacy is the ability to communicate your needs. And we will talk more about self-advocacy later. But as a student, I would first contact the accessibility office and self-identify. I will most likely have to complete an intake form that asks questions about my disability, the accommodations I've used in the past, and what accommodations I am seeking out. I also have to provide current documentation of the disability and then discuss these accommodation needs with the accessibility counselor.
Now, as an accessibilities counselor, once we have that initial intake meeting with the student, we listen to what the student's needs are, what they had in the past, all of that. Accommodations are discussed and agreed upon together. Then our office generates a letter for the student saying, these are the approved accommodations.
And as a student, if I want accommodations in a specific class, I should be prepared to share the letter with that professor about the accommodations.
And as a professor, I provide the accommodations, and it's really left up to the student to advocate for themselves and let us know if they need help.
And then as a student, I will need to monitor my accommodations and update them every semester. I need to let my professor and the accessibilities office know when I need help.
And again, from the accessibility counselor's perspective, it's not typical for the accessibilities office to reach out to the individual student again, saying, hey, how can we help you? We really wait for the student to come back to us and say, hey, I tried to do this. I need help. I need your help to, communicate with the faculty. So it's really the student's responsibility to kind of let that accessibilities office know what's going on with them.
And Missy, what should a parent or guardian do? How should they be involved in this process?
Great question, Ms. Blake. So parents, you can help your child gather documentation, practice those self-advocacy skills, develop a timeline, even role play a conversation like this. And I will also add, from a high school perspective, I will share from my experience that many of my students, I would talk to them about this process of getting accommodations. And a lot of students would say, I've had an IEP all throughout my high school, middle school years, even elementary, and I'm starting a new chapter with going to college, and I just want to try this on my own. And what I say to them is that while I respect that 100%, and I understand where they're coming from, I still recommend that they go through this process because it's better to have something in place that you don't need rather than need something and not have it. Also, when I worked in high school, I would have former students come back to me and ask for their documentation because they chose not to apply for accommodations and they wish they had done it sooner. So just keep that in mind. We'll talk more about this, but accommodations are not retroactive. So it's best to not wait until you're struggling if you're going to need those accommodations.
So what do reasonable accommodations look like? Reasonable accommodations level the playing field and ensures equal access. Reasonable accommodations do not guarantee success. So if a student has accommodations, it does not mean that they're guaranteed to pass or do really well. So what you see listed here are examples of some common accommodations that a lot of colleges and universities do offer. Extended time, usually for tests and quizzes, is typically called time and a half. Interpreters are available for deaf and hard of hearing students. And a note taker could be another student in the class or some type of assisted technology. Other common accommodations are priority registration and course substitutions. Again, these are just examples of some of the most common accommodations we see. Housing could be a single room or possibly closer access to a restroom or a kitchen, depending on the needs of the student. It is important to check with the university about the accommodations that are offered.
So we want to take the time to share some student voices because we think it's really powerful to hear students' perspectives. Students who have applied for accommodations, who are receiving them at the college level, and how they have benefited from this process. So some takeaways you can see here. are that you have to learn the rules and regulations and your rights. And if you're concerned about any of that, please feel free to reach out to your ETR or some of the other individuals that Dr. Henry mentioned earlier in this presentation, those people at your school, and they can help you understand all of that. Another quote here was that was hard for me because I never had to speak up for myself before. And that's the case with a lot of students in high school. Because again, adults have such an important role in a high school setting. And sometimes it takes students a little longer to find their voice, but we recommend practicing that during your high school years with people you trust in your school. Try to be your best advocate before you transition. It will certainly help you out in the long run. And then another quote, you have to start early. I made sure I went to the DSS office in the summer before I even started classes. It's important to keep in mind, once you know which college you're planning to go to, go ahead. And if you know you want to apply for accommodations, look into that accessibilities office and in their process and apply and get that out of the way. Because the last quote says, I definitely recommend getting and using your accommodations. Really important to be on top of all of this. And if you think it's something you need, it doesn't hurt to have it in place. And then you can use it if you need to, because again, the accommodations are not retroactive. You can't go back and say, oh, well, I actually have this accommodations. I needed extended time on this test. They will not allow that. So remember, students and parents, that this process doesn't have to be scary. It's an exciting time. So be prepared and get involved. We often share with our students that knowledge is power. Use what you have available now while you're in high school to learn more about yourself, your interests and your values, your strengths. Learning more about yourself will really help you in this process. Research all of your options. Not everyone's path has to look the same. Maybe you want to start out at NOVA and then transfer to a four-year school, for example. So get involved, ask those questions and get the answers. And if you haven't already, find staff members and mentors that you connect with. And you definitely want to do that once you get to college too. College is a time to gain marketable skills that will help prepare you to be successful. So consider giving time and talent back to your community. Colleges want to see that, and it will help prepare you for your future. And finally, be involved in your IEP while you're still in high school, because knowing yourself and knowing what you need and how to get it will really help you in the long run.
And again, self-advocacy is the ability to communicate your needs. And it is important for you to communicate your needs by scheduling meetings early, talking with the accessibility office, meeting with your academic advisor, and by paying close attention to deadlines. Be an advocate for yourself. We know that it can be hard for students to ask for help in front of a class. So remember that professors have office hours. And as one professor told me, I don't have office hours to sit alone in a room and stare at four walls. So take note of when office hours are and speak with your professors. And we're going to leave you today with actual words from a student in college that has some advice for you.
Hey, I'm a college sophomore with ADHD and anxiety, and right now I'm trying to get accommodations from my university. For the first time ever, I have a professor that doesn't accept late work. And I know if I get accommodations now, they won't be retroactive. It's hard because my documentation is old and I need a therapist note, but many of us can't afford therapists. I know I should have been a better advocate myself and have done it earlier. So if you're on the fence about accessing accommodations, then reach out to the college accessibilities office and apply for accommodations. You don't always have to use them, but it's nice to have them.
So I hope you remember the words of the student that you just heard. Is so important to advocate for yourself and advocate early. We're going to end with a quote. We want to be champions for our children. You are champions for your children. Educators are champions for your children. Every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists that they become the best that they can possibly be. Remember, differences are strengths, not deficits, and let's champion every child. Thank you.